Hello, everyone. Today's chess puzzle.
All right. Sounds good.
We have white with a bishop on g5, queen on h5, pawn on d4,
Okay.
pawn on c3, rook on g3, pawn on a2,
Got it.
pawn on f2, pawn on h2, king on c1, and rook on e1.
Okay.
Black has a rook on a8, bishop on c8, rook on f8, king on g8, pawn on a7, pawn on b7, pawn on c7,
Okay.
pawn on g7, pawn on h7, knight on c6,
All right.
queen on d5, and pawn on f3. Let's get this going.
So looking at the board here, one thing that really stands out is that tension around the black king.
Yeah.
White's queen, has a potential line of attack there, although it's a little exposed at the moment.
I see.
And the bishop on g5, while it seems kind of limited right now, it does point down towards that black king side.
And black's queen in the center, wow, it looks really strong.
Oh, yeah.
It controls a lot of key squares.
Absolutely.
Plus that pawn on f3, that's hanging, isn't it?
It is. It is. That's definitely a vulnerability.
But white's rook on g3 feels like it could be more active, if it had an open file.
Yeah, I agree. Black's got that central control with the queen. It's a big factor.
Right.
And defending that f3 pawn is going to be pretty critical for them right now. But, notice how those rooks on the back rank. For black, they're not connected.
Yeah, I see that.
That could become important later on if white can somehow open up some lines.
So it seems like the big challenge for white is going to be breaking through that central defense that black has.
Yeah.
And then, exploiting that potential weakness on the king side.
Exactly.
I feel like a forcing sequence might be the way to go here to make any real progress.
I think so, too. We need to find those moves that don't just create an immediate threat,
Right.
but also kind of box black in, limit their responses, almost dictate what they have to do next.
So almost force their hand.
Yeah, exactly. So let's look at the possibilities around that black queen.
Okay.
It's in a strong central position. Could we maybe lure it away somehow?
Interesting.
And then what about that black king? It seems a little passive back there.
All right, so let's see how this all plays out. The solution starts with white's bishop, moving from g5 to f6.
That's interesting. What's fascinating about that move is how it immediately puts pressure on the black queen.
Uh-huh.
They can't just ignore that threat. It forces them to react.
And black responds by moving their queen from d5 to h5.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Gets the queen out of danger, maintains a little bit of defense on the king side.
Right.
But it does take the queen away from all those juicy central squares that it controlled before.
True. Next, white plays rook from g3 to g7. Now that looks like a very direct threat.
Oh, it definitely is, putting the black king directly under pressure now.
Yeah.
And there aren't a lot of escape squares for the king either. Black has got to deal with this attack head on.
So black moves their king from g8 to h8, just getting out of check for the moment.
Right, just in time. But white keeps up the pressure. They move their rook from g7 to g6.
So the attack continues, and black needs to figure out a defense against this new threat.
Absolutely. They need to act quickly here.
Okay, so black responds by moving their rook from f8 to f6, blocking that attack on g6.
Yeah, using the rook as a shield, basically.
Now white plays rook from e1 to e8, bringing their last big piece into the attack.
Bingo. This is where things get really dangerous for black.
Okay, I see.
White's got a double rook threat on the e-file now.
Wow.
And that puts a lot of pressure on black's remaining rook. They're really feeling the squeeze.
So what can black do?
Well, they're kind of stuck. They have to respond by taking white's rook on e8 with their rook on f6.
Just to eliminate that immediate threat.
Exactly. They've got to try to survive.
Okay, so they take the rook.
And now, the final move. White takes black's rook on f8 with the rook on e8. Checkmate.
Oh, wow. So that's it. It's over.
It is. Beautiful, isn't it?
It really is.
We saw how a really focused attack, even starting from positions that looked pretty passive at first, can completely overwhelm the opponent.
Yeah.
White's moves, starting with that bishop sacrifice, really restricted black's options. Step by step, white closed the net, leading to this unavoidable checkmate. And, those disconnected rooks for black, they just couldn't coordinate well enough to protect their king.
Fascinating.
And it really shows how important piece coordination is.
So there you go. White's bishop moves from g5 to f6. Black's queen moves from d5 to h5.
Right.
White's rook moves from g3 to g7. Black's king moves from g8 to h8. White's rook moves from g7 to g6. Black's rook moves from f8 to f6.
Yes.
White's rook moves from e1 to e8. Black's rook moves from f6 to f8. And white's rook on e8 takes on f8 for the checkmate.
A perfect finish.
Thank you for listening.